The drought is officially over. Nebraska's going to a bowl game, but is there more on the table? We'll talk about it coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That is at FanDuel.com to get started.
Okay, welcome in. As you said, Connor, Nebraska has done it. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone in Omaha via Las Vegas.
Yeah.
His broadcast position today. Now I am the one who gets to be jealous. Connor is with me on the heels of Nebraska's 44-25 victory Saturday at Memorial Stadium over Wisconsin. The 10-game streak against the Badgers is over. The 7-year bull drought is over. We had euphoria and excitement all around these parts on Saturday night in the wake of Nebraska's victory. Oh, what a difference just 1 week can make. Connor, let's get into discussing this game. First of all, 473 yards of offense, 44 points for Nebraska. As I mentioned, the high of the rule era in the points category. This is game 2 for Dana Holgorsen. What are we to make of this?
Well, I mean, the first thing that you noted, obviously you notice that it scores points and the offense has some rhythm to it, but I think chiefly one of the main things that we've talked about during this losing streak for Nebraska is, what has become of Dylan Raiola, and what has become of him now over the last 2 games is something completely different. I mean, what a change 2 weeks can make. We talked about sort of the seeds that were laid down in the USC game. It felt like that was a minor step forward for the offense on really short notice for the play caller. And obviously Saturday night was a gigantic step forward for Raiola, the offense, and everything in between. I think you got to start there because if that guy's feeling better, Nebraska's feeling better as a program.
Yeah, he looked like the 5-star freshman that we saw against Colorado, against UTEP, against Northern Iowa. This was not Dylan Raiola of the second half of the season in the Big Ten, who was bogged down with pressure, and I mean physical pressure and mental pressure that he faced. He didn't put the offense in bad positions. He made fantastic throws, great reads. He got the ball out quick. He didn't throw balls that were prone for turnovers. I mean, there weren't even any of those throws where it looked like it could have been a turnover if Nebraska hadn't made the right move downfield. There were balls that were points that Nebraska left on the field where Dylan was doing the things that needed to be done to score, and his receivers didn't come up with the plays, but other times they did. And we saw all kinds of players who were involved for Nebraska on the offensive side. It was like, there are the weapons that we talked about in June and July for this offense. Emmett Johnson looked like a changed running back. He's making people miss left and right. Ja'Cory Barney, 9 catches for 85 yards. He had more than 150 all-purpose yards. Emmett Johnson, I mentioned, he had more than 200 total yards when you added his receiving and rushing yards together. First back this year to go over 100 yards rushing. He had 113 on 17 carries. You had the tight ends involved, Nate Borkercher, Luke Lindenmeyer getting involved in the offense. 2 backs in the game at the same time. Heinrich Harburg with an actual impact on the game, playing the quarterback spot, not just coming in as a gimmick for one play. Like he actually there was a purpose for him to come into the game. So, hey, Dana got on a roll. Dana started pushing buttons and he found some rhythm.
It's easy to say that when it works, and we don't there's no alternate universe here, right? Sometimes it's a make or miss game. It either works or it doesn't work, but all these things happen based off of it now. There's rhythm, there's confidence, and you're right, all those playmakers start to show up again. I mean, I started to get it a little bit after Nebraska took a pretty commanding lead, late in the game, end of the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, and like, hey, it's over, it's done. Nebraska's going to a bowl game. They got their 6th win, and people obviously have a little bit of PTSD with Nebraska football, and they're like, how are they going to blow it tonight? What's going to happen? Never felt that was going to happen, just because the confidence that I had in Nebraska's offense going up and down the field. And you have to factor in the defense that you're playing and all that stuff too. But Nebraska hasn't been able to do it consistently against the worst of defenses that they've played.
Right.
So that, I never felt like it was really out of control for Nebraska at all.
Wisconsin statistically on defense, and I know they were without safety Hunter Wooler, but that's one player, is better than Illinois, is better than Rutgers, is better than UCLA and USC. This is the number 3 ranked defense that Nebraska's played all season, and Iowa will be in that category or a step above Wisconsin. But Indiana, Ohio State, Wisconsin, that's where the defense is ranked that Nebraska has played this season in terms of yards allowed per game. And Nebraska cut through the Badgers, who I will say are beaten down, much like Nebraska, at 5-5 coming into this game. So they were on even ground. And Nebraska, it did what it wanted. It took what it wanted on the offensive side. It was so refreshing to see a Nebraska offense that dictated the game.
That's it.
UCLA 2 weeks ago, the last time we saw Nebraska at Memorial Stadium, did the same thing to Nebraska. It dictated the game. And this time they came out and said, nope. And even when there's a tendency in the second half, as you mentioned, when Nebraska started to get a comfortable lead and Wisconsin was answering and scoring fast.
Yeah.
And there was a feeling, I felt it, where it was like, okay, if something bad goes against Nebraska here, if there's a pick 6, or if you get a quick 3 and out and a punt return, and all of a sudden Wisconsin scores 2 touchdowns in like a 4-minute span, it could get hairy real fast. But the thing that they didn't do on offense is they didn't pull back. And that's kind of a Matt Rule thing to do, is to pull back and be conservative and play that NFL style and say, we're going to get to the fourth quarter and then we're going to run the ball and we're going to win this game. That's not what they did. They said, we're going to keep the foot on the gas, and it worked in their favor this time. Not to say that that's going to work in their favor every time, but it did Saturday.
Well, it just goes to show you that like it's all dictated by attitude, right? We just had, it was a totally that was the team that was there in the first half of the Colorado game, or a large percentage of it, a portion of it. I don't know if that sort of emotion and energy is like, recreatable and for Nebraska just because of the circumstances, but it was really close, and Nebraska had never replicated it throughout the rest of the entire season except for this past Saturday. So, I mean, like, you could look at it a couple different ways. You could say, man, I mean, it's awesome that it's here now, and Nebraska has a real chance to finish their season on a super high note, send it into the offseason with all the good vibes coming your way. But also you think, was that there the whole time? Was that an opportunity that is missed? But at least the lessons maybe seem to be learned now. I don't think Nebraska is just like a changed, different program now. I don't know, but like they have to.
No, we're not going to fall in that trap. We're not going to fall in that trap.
They got to do it a couple weeks in a row here in order to get that. But it's a great example of what they're capable of. And that's what we saw Saturday.
You're not going to be able to stop the conversations around Nebraska here, especially if the Huskers play well on offense Friday against Iowa, which is a different animal going into Kinnick at night in 20-degree weather. But you're not going to be able to stop the questions about what would have happened if Nebraska had Dana Holgorsen as its offensive coordinator all year. Would the Huskers be 9-2? Would they be 8-3 or 8-4, 9-3 going to a bowl game? And you could say yes. I mean, you could make that case very easily, but I don't think we should do that. I don't think Nebraska fans should torment themselves that way. I think Nebraska should aim at this point and be solely focused on getting 7 wins and then getting to 8 wins in a bowl game, which is going to be so much fun for Nebraska fans to get to go to a bowl destination. Whether it's Tampa, or it's Phoenix, or it's Charlotte, or it's Nashville. I think those are maybe the 4 most likely destinations that Nebraska could find itself playing in around Christmas or right thereafter. And it's just such a relief for this program to be able to have that conversation, to be able to sit here before Thanksgiving and to go to Thanksgiving and be around your family and your friends in the state of Nebraska and talk about what you're going to do and if you're going to go to a bowl game and where Nebraska might go to a bowl game. Like it's really just, I wrote in my column that came out on Sunday on The Athletic that this was one of the most cathartic moments in the history of Nebraska football. And you say, wow, really? I mean, they're 6-5. That's, get some perspective. Like, no, it was to beat Wisconsin and to get bowl eligible in the same swing is, to me, only trailing the 1978. I mean, this is before you were born and I was a baby, but I know the history. Tom Osborne lost 5 consecutive games against Oklahoma at the start of his career. And he finally broke through in 1978. And it was that kind of a moment. And then, of course, his first national championship and beating Miami in the Orange Bowl, a game that I was at on January 1st, 1995. That's it. There is no other moment that was more cathartic, more soul cleansing than what we saw Saturday night.
I want to keep talking about the emotion, honestly, because there was a conversation because fans, students, whatever, ran onto the field and
good for them.
The images were fantastic. I agree. So let's continue to have that conversation and recap the game and what's next for Nebraska. When we return, we'll be right back on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. All right, I want to tell you a little bit about the FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get ready to tackle all the NFL action, college action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You get that hunch in the middle of the game. Let's say you're watching all the games on a gigantic screen somewhere on a Sunday afternoon. You can pull out that FanDuel Sportsbook app and make your selections on the fly, because that's what it's all about. It's about a vibe sometimes. You can view the live play-by-play and so much more right on that same place where you place those bets. Head to FanDuel.com today. You'll get started once again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Head to FanDuel.com today. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. A reminder, we're going to have a bit of an abbreviated kind of week this week. The game is a day earlier, and I got travel stuff all over the place. So our ask to you all is to get your mailbag questions in early for the week if you can. So we're still going to do the show. We're still going to have a mailbag show, but we're probably going to end up recording it a little bit earlier. So send it in at lockedonneb@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter, leave a YouTube comments, wherever you want to get in touch with the show. But get those in a little bit earlier this week so we can make a stockpile of them and then have a lovely Thursday mailbag show for you all.
Ask us what our favorite Thanksgiving foods are. Connor, is this like one of those questions that you just refuse? Is this like the Halloween candy thing, or is this worse than Halloween candy?
So I don't know. In no specific order, Halloween candy, what's on your Thanksgiving plate, or like what's your favorite Thanksgiving side, and is a hot dog a sandwich? I don't trust. I don't talk about any of those questions because they're asked.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I'm willing to wade into those waters a little bit, but
you do. Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's a bad one, but I think yes, it is.
If you want to ask us about Thanksgiving lunch, dinner, whatever it is, feel free. The mailbag is open. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Let's pick back up here. So the fans rushed the field to get their 6th win.
At least they waited until the game was over.
At least they did, unlike the folks in Tempe, Arizona. So this is a program with 5 national championships, a lot of tradition. They have trophies in their trophy case. They have experienced success before. But they rushed the field to get their, after beating a 5-win team to get their 6th win. And there were some who had a reaction to that. I say, have your fun, man. If you are going to, like, if you're going to go through all the pain and suffering of the last 10 years almost of no bowls and not celebrate when you actually break the streak, then what is it all for? Like, we're not supposed to celebrate accomplishments anymore. I loved it. I thought it was like real raw emotion spilling out. I support it wholeheartedly.
Even for those students who have no idea what the 1978 Oklahoma game was or the 1995 Orange Bowl was, they had a sense. They had an understanding of what kind of a moment that was for the program to get over those hurdles at once. And I was there for it. I was down there on the field, and I just kind of stood there and took it in, because, like, while we're observers of this in kind of in a much different way than the fans, like, this stuff, like, it gets into your bloodstream a little bit. And, like, I mean, it's impossible not to just feel the sadness and the disappointment right there with the fans, and especially the players and the coaches year after year after year after 2016. And not just the fact that they haven't made bowl games, but that they're getting crushed by their rivals, and that they're having opportunities here in these last 2 years to get close to bowl games. And every time it's heartbreak. And all of these games that end on the last drive unsuccessfully, these players, they don't put any less into Nebraska football than the players at Georgia or the players at Alabama or Ohio State, and they're not getting as much out of it. So for all of those reasons, I looked around, and yeah, I mean, the fans being on the field was nice, but I was looking more at the players and the coaches and like just the looks on their faces. And, some of them who haven't even been here for, like Raiola, he's been here for less than a year, but he understood, I think, better than most freshmen what it meant. And he went running across the field to find his mom, who was in tears, and his brother and sister were there, and just celebrating with the family. And it was very real. This was not for TV. This was not for the cameras. It was extremely real and raw. And that's the kind of vibe I got all over the place on on Tom Osborne Field in the minutes after that game ended.
You know what made it better too, Mitch? Like that they took it, right? Wisconsin answered a couple times. Like we said before, it could have gotten a little bit hairy. But they stomped them out. They won the game, right? And they kept their foot on the gas pedal to be able to finish that thing. If they limp into it, if they're like, they got to hold them off at the end with a defensive stand, or they block, they knock down a Hail Mary or something like that. It's like, okay, all right, well, we did it. We got our 6. I guess we're gonna play Iowa in 6 days. No, that was the perfect opportunity to do it. So absolutely,
it was more of a complete 4 quarters than the Colorado game, and the margin of victory was larger than Colorado in the end. But Nebraska played well in both halves for the first time this season, which is mind-boggling to say after in the 11th game of the year. But it was something to see, and to beat Wisconsin in a way where you punch them in the face. Nebraska was the better team at the line of scrimmage. Nebraska ran the ball more effectively. Nebraska stopped the run well. Nebraska was in the backfield with its defense. It had a 4th down stop that was a TFL. Wisconsin didn't have a tackle for loss the whole game. Didn't have a sack, had 1 quarterback hurry. That's how Wisconsin has pushed Nebraska around for better than a decade, and Nebraska flipped it. So, I don't think that irony was lost on Matt Rule. He talked after the game about having watched Nebraska lose to Wisconsin 2 years ago at Memorial Stadium while he was contemplating the job, and did not think that he was going to take the Nebraska job. And he watched this game. And so it was a full circle moment for him in that sense. They
did it exactly the way he wanted them to do it, right? I think he put, he gambled a little bit by continuing to approach it. They hired a different offensive coordinator. Obviously, they moved some things around a little bit, But consistently, Matt Rule was like, no, I mean, we're gonna either win or lose with these seniors, and if they don't do it, then it's gonna be up to the next group to do it. And they did it, and they really stomped them out. So I think the way you did it was really, really important in this thing too. And everything about the game being against Wisconsin, obviously huge as well. But now, as we have one more thing to kind of hit before we get to our final segment here, the question is, can they capitalize off of this momentum that they have seemingly, trudged up out of nowhere over the last week, over the last couple of days? Can they capitalize off of it and beat another rival, this time on the road, and then maybe even find their way to an 8th win this year, which is, still on the table?
Yeah, you sure like their chances to go out and play free and play loose at Iowa on Friday, more in the situation now where that 6th win's taken care of than if Nebraska had found a way to lose against Wisconsin on Saturday and you had to go over to Iowa again with 5 wins. I think the Iowa people, they just revel in that moment because it's happened several times where Nebraska's needed a victory to get to the postseason. And while Iowa can't ruin a championship bid for Nebraska, so many times it's been able to ruin Nebraska's season or put the final nail into the coffin that is Nebraska's season. Now, the last time over there in Iowa City, Nebraska kind of did that to the Hawkeyes. They had a chance to win and go to the Big Ten championship game, and Nebraska, with a lame duck coaching staff, Matt Rule had already been hired at that point, remember, 2 years ago. While watching the Wisconsin game, he did not believe he was going to take the Nebraska job. And then 5 days later on Thanksgiving, he accepted the Nebraska job. And the news was reported on the morning that Nebraska played at Iowa. So that's the last time Nebraska went to Kinnick Stadium. But most of these games have just been Iowa inflicting pain on Nebraska. And they can't do that this time. Nebraska's gotten to where it needs to get this year. Like, this is gravy. Yeah, you want a 7th win. It would be fantastic. It's really important. But I like Nebraska's chances to go in there and maximize what it's able to do. Is that enough to beat an Iowa team that is going to run the ball and stop the run and not make mistakes and make all their field goals, unlike Wisconsin did on Saturday, and have the home crowd at their back and love to play in the cold at night? I don't know. I mean, they're an underdog, obviously, already, and they're not many people are going to expect them to win, but I think there's an opportunity for them to play well.
All right, coming back here on the final segment. Speaking of exercising demons, what a weekend for Nebraska sports altogether. Yeah. And there was a bit of a tone setter on Friday night in Omaha. We'll come back and discuss that on the other side here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
Okay, as you teased there, Connor, basketball season is here, and GameTime makes getting tickets to basketball games much easier. You want to see a buzzer beater this year, a great overtime game? Maybe you just want to see a good game between two rivals that goes in a direction that nobody expected it to go. Well, you could have done that Friday night in downtown Omaha, but if you didn't, and you're not in the arena yet, go to GameTime and get your tickets, whether it's basketball, football games that are left on the calendar, concerts, shows. It's not just sports. Check out the feature of the GameTime app that they call GameTime Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only the most incredible deal on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of options. Coming up, Nebraska's got South Dakota and North Florida coming into PBA. Indiana in the Big Ten home opener is a couple of weeks away. How about Creighton, Kansas in Omaha coming up soon, or an NBA game, whatever. GameTime allows you to customize your spot in the basketball arena. I love that you can get curated deals to make it easier to find the best prices on great seats. And there's the GameTime Super Deal, a unique feature that you need to examine. It's got event cancellation protection, and as always, the lowest price guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, back here on this Monday. Again, get your mailbag questions in so we can answer those Wednesday and get you a good Thursday mailbag show. If you're traveling around to see family, you'll want to listen to us, listen to our mailbag answers. Let's make it fun and entertaining. So get us lots of questions. Feel good week around the state of Nebraska. Should be lots to ask, lots to discuss. It started on the weekend, as you mentioned, Connor, with the Nebraska men's basketball team. Well, the Nebraska women's basketball team also went to Omaha, and Creighton started, the women did, with a win against the Nebraska women. And then things got going for the Huskers. And the number 14 ranked Creighton men went down 74-63. Nebraska just controlled the game, the whole game,
Totally.
from beginning to end, a lockdown defensive effort. My opinion about Fred Hoiberg's team, did like a 180 that night in watching that game. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the way how physical they were, with Creighton especially. I mean, Ryan Kalkbrenner is still one of the best players in the country, and he was becoming more the focal point of Creighton's offense this year. Notably, he had a 49-point game already, and Nebraska only allowed him to get one shot off, and it was from the 3-point line. I mean, that's absurd. That
doesn't make any sense. Like
he rarely touched the basketball, and there was that. And so, in order to do that, Nebraska had employed this strategy the last few years against Creighton. They were going to maybe take some chances beyond the 3-point line, but I thought they closed out well. They never allowed Creighton to get comfortable at all. I mean, it was a heck of a performance. I thought, really the list is pretty endless for Nebraska. Obviously, you start with those big guys doing work against Kalkbrenner, but I thought Jawan Gary was kind of like the alpha male, dude of the game,
sure.
and he was his swagger and energy was infectious for everybody. Nebraska was they showed something that I didn't know they had. What a win for them on Friday.
He was a grown man,
yep,
as some people might say. That was Jawan Gary. Nebraska's an old team, an experienced team, and it showed in that game. I thought Raleigh Worcester was very good.
Solid.
I thought Buchtengel.
You got it.
You
had it the first time. Buchtengel.
Buchtengel was very good. The UCLA transfer. Bryce Williams, Jawan Gary's running mate, the top returning players on that roster, they were good. Connor Esijan, the Wisconsin transfer off the bench, just fit perfectly into his role. But really, it was about the defense. Credit Nate Lenzer, Nebraska's assistant coach, who's in charge of running that defense, with a great strategy, and credit Hoiberg, who is just historically an offensive guy and a great offensive mind, for just continuing to reshape the way that Nebraska plays basketball and allowing them to focus so much on the defensive side, because it paid off in that game. So I'm excited to see December for Nebraska men's basketball.
Yeah, now they have a real good blueprint of all right, here's the kind of energy we need in the Big Ten every night, right? And if they do that, they clearly have the thing that you were maybe worried about in the game, just from a matchup perspective, is Kalkbrenner defensively, he's going to have such an imprint on the game, and then obviously how many bodies can they throw at him offensively? But those three big guys, Berke, Andrew Morgan, and Braxton Mia, who Hoiberg said afterwards, we threw him out there and he got tired after 3 minutes, so
why is this happening?
They just ran the next guy out there, right?
Yeah.
They were just
they have that depth,
everything at them. And it just looked more, I thought Nebraska looked like the more connected team, that doesn't routinely happen in that game. Creighton usually precisions everybody to death. But I thought Nebraska looked like the more connected team. That's a heck of a statement right out of the gate here in November.
And we should say, best wishes, and I hope that Stephen Ashworth is healthy sooner rather than later. He is the glue for Creighton, primary ball handler, their best shooter, their point guard, and went down with an ankle injury that just didn't look good on the court toward the end of the game. And Creighton's got this big event in Las Vegas this week. And as we mentioned, Kansas coming in, they go to Alabama. So they're going to need Stephen Ashworth. And I hope that time that he's out is minimized.
Yeah. I saw some people talking about what Creighton might be like this year, right? Their teams tend to get better as the year goes along, but dealing with an injury to a guy who's been around for a really long time, for probably at least a couple of weeks here, at the very least, is going to be, they're going to have to ask some young guys to grow up pretty quickly. So there's that piece of it too. And then for Nebraska, the non-con schedule, the remaining non-con schedule is pretty light. Take care of business, and all of a sudden it hits pretty hard. Second week of December, but no doubt that gives you a huge shot in the arm, and it's a pelt on the wall for NCAA tournament resumes.
Right. Really important to split those games. If you're not going to get St. Mary's, which they didn't, they lost that game by 3 points in Sioux Falls. Important for Nebraska to get that quad one victory against Creighton, because there just aren't many opportunities for Nebraska in the non-conference to get wins like that. So then, of course, there was football at Memorial Stadium, which we've discussed. And after Nebraska football, there was Nebraska volleyball at the Devaney Center, which was the hottest ticket of the entire weekend. You couldn't get into the Devaney Center on Saturday night for under about $250 when the fees and everything hit. I made it over right as they were going through introductions to Nebraska volleyball. The interviews were over at Memorial Stadium, and that place was electric.
Yeah.
John Cook mentioned in the middle of the first set that he just knew there was absolutely no way his team was going to lose that night, because the fans were not going to allow it. And Nebraska swept Wisconsin. It was a sweep of the Badgers. They swept them out of Lincoln in every sport available on Saturday, which has not been happening in recent years in either one of these sports, either one of these venues. So very much a feel-good day Saturday and Friday night for Troy Dannon and the Nebraska athletic department. Senior night at Devaney Center, tons and tons of emotion. I think Nebraska is going to win the national championship. That's, it's premature. It's a month away, but I'm going to call it right now. Like, I've been watching Nebraska volleyball for 30 years, and they've won 5 of them in that time. This team's right there with just about any of those teams. So, and the leadership is remarkable with what Lexi Rodriguez and Merritt Beeson bring to that team. I've got a volleyball story that I won't reveal the details of. It's going to come out on Thanksgiving on Thursday, and that's why I was at Devaney last night, and I'm excited to talk about it later in the week and share it with people.
It's a program that was like, the base of it is developed on defense, and they've always done that well. So you can always count on that. But they're a machine. They are a machine this year. Like everywhere you look, they could throw 100 different options at you. Oh, wait, one of our pin hitters is off on whatever given night. That's all right. We got like an all conference player from last year who's just, chilling back there. So they got options, they got depth, and they got star power. Like, so they check all the boxes.
Yeah. All right. Matt Rule will be up on Monday doing his weekly press conference. No changes really to the schedule for Nebraska this week, other than just kind of condensing some things. Sunday was like a Monday as far as their preparation went, or parts of it. They make 2 days into one, and then they get to Monday, and I don't know if it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, whatever it is.
Smash it.
We're going to hear from the head coach. We're going to hear from the head coach on Monday around noon. We're going to hear from Tony White, Dana Holgorsen, and some players tomorrow on Tuesday, and we will be back with you guys to share all of that stuff, and to get you through this holiday and into Friday, see if Nebraska can get a 7th win. That's it. That's a wrap for this Monday edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig puts the Big Ten first. Find that Locked On Big Ten podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day.